Hi guys, James at Goddard Radio Moscow Beer and Metal Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to return to Australia. I'm still filming in Auckland in New Zealand, but we'll go back over to Australia for this one, and we're going to visit the state of Western Australia. And if you've watched my channel previously, my German reviews, you'll know that this style of beer is one that is pretty close to my heart, and that's the Rauch beer. And that's because my friend Daniel lives in Bamberg, and really he got me into beers with the sort of Schlenkerla Rauch beers, the famous Rauch beers from northern Bavaria. So for this one we are going to go to Nail Brewing, who are from Perth in Western Australia, and I'm quite interested to try this one today because, as I say, I really love this style of beer, and Nail Brewing are a very decorated brewery in Western Australia. So as is usual then with my beer reviews, I'll take you through a very kind of brief history of the brewery, tell you a little bit about where the beer comes from and all that kind of thing. If you do want to go straight to the tasting, just fast forward, and the brewery website is in the video description for you below, along with a link to my other reviews from this brewery that I'll do in the near future. So anyway, Nail Brewing is based in Bassendean district in Perth in Western Australia, and the brewery was established in 1996 by John Stallwood, and their first microbrewery was opened at Bobby Dazzler's Alehouse in Murray Street, and the first beer that was produced was the Nail Ale, which was an Australian Pale Ale. Now in April of 2004, John was assaulted after intervening in a fight in Fremantle, and he actually fell into a coma for 10 days, but his injuries were so severe that meant he actually had to have a titanium plate inserted into his skull, and then the brewery's equipment was sold and the brewery was essentially disbanded after that, sadly. But luckily he actually resumed brewing in 2006 at Jarrah Jack's brewery in Pemberton, and then he relocated to the Joondalup campus of the Edith Cowan University in the city. But Nail Brewing actually went on to later produce the most expensive bottle of beer in the world, and this was the Antarctic Nail Ale, which was brewed using water melted from a block of Antarctic ice. Now the ice was collected by the crew of Sea Shepherd by helicopter from an iceberg in the Southern Ocean, and then it was transported to Tasmania, where it was melted and then transported again to Perth in Western Australia. And only 30 bottles of this beer were made, but they fetched over $1,000, nearer $2,000 actually, at auction, and all proceeds have actually gone to the Sea Shepherd Conservation Society. And actually, interestingly enough, my local brewery in Scotland, Brewdog, they did this in 2010 with the End of the World beer, but they were overtaken by Nail Brewing. So Nail Brewing got one up on my local brewery in that one. But in January 2012 they actually made a deal with Ferrell Brewing Company to develop a brewhouse and warehouse in Bassendean, and that is where they're now based. So that's why I say Nail Brewing Company come from Bassendean in Perth in Western Australia. So that's your kind of brief history of the brewery. To list a few of the other beers you can get from these guys, you get the Australian Pale Ale, you get the Oatmeal Stout, Clout Stout, Hugh Dun Brown, which is meant to be one of their best beers, and you also get the Claydon Imperial Porter, and of course this guy, the Smoky Burns Rauch beer, but I believe this one is actually a seasonal beer. So those of you who are watching from Western Australia, please inform me of that, or some of the guys at Nail Brewing, because I do get some of the brewers watching my reviews. So to tell you about this beer itself, it's a 6% smoke beer, and it's brewed with German Rauch malts, which of course are smoked over beechwood, I believe it is. So it does actually tell you a little bit about the hops and things on the side of this beer. As I said, it's 6% Rauch beer. It says in the malts you've got Munich smoked, Carafa pale malts and Cara Munich malts. So you've got quite an interesting malt blend in there, and the hops are Wakatu, which I believe are actually New Zealand hops, and it says the notes, the target profile is a medium smoky, original extract is 14, and the IBUs, the international bitterness units, are 28, and it says it was bottled on the 26th of March 2014. So this beer is just about a year old, and it's actually quite nicely presented. It says brewed with 5 malts, including rare Rauch malt, smoked over German beechwood, hint of malt, fresh hops and light chocolate, a unique session beer and fantastic with food, smoky goodness. This beer is brewed for the Burns family. So I'm guessing, I'm not sure if that's a reference to Rabbie Burns, who's obviously our national poet in Scotland. But just to let you have a little look at the artwork on this one, it's quite nicely presented. You can see there, that's the sort of, you can see the nails in this kind of sort of wax stamp that's the sort of medieval thing. Just a plain bottle cap on this one, but without further ado we will get this guy open and get on with the tasting. Nice kind of smoky opening there, just a little bit of smoke coming out of this one, so we'll get it poured. You can smell the caramel in this one as you pour it, even without paying too much attention to it. That's the first thing that comes out as a nice kind of big caramel nose on this one. So there we are. But as you can see, it pours a really nice kind of rosewoody kind of mahogany colour actually. It's got a finger, maybe a finger and a half of a slightly beigeish head. Very foamy, not really kind of bumpy or anything like that. If I put my fingers behind it, you can see not transparent in the slightest, very, very hazy. I think there are a little bit of sediment particles floating around in there, but there's a lot of small bubbles going up towards the bottom of the head, and there's some nice big bubbles just sticking to the side of the glass. So in terms of the aroma, as you would expect from the style, you're getting quite a bit of meat and smoky character from it, but from what I remember of the Schlenkerla, this guy actually has a lot of the meaty character coming out. This is a bit more meaty than Schlenkerla in its aroma. Schlenkerla, if I remember, you do get a little bit more of the smoke and the kind of vanilla coming out, but this one really does smell a bit more meaty. But yeah, it's very smoky and very charred underneath. You can get that underneath the meat, but the meat is really, it's a nice sweet meat aroma that comes out with this guy. But there's a good bit of caramel and kind of nuts come out in this one as well. And you can just pick up that kind of big bready note in there too. The big malt, these of course are very, very malty beers, so you wouldn't expect much of a hoppy aroma from this one, but a hugely kind of barbecue meaty beer. And it really does smell beautiful. I absolutely adore Rauch beer, so really cool to try one from over the other side of the world, from Germany. But yeah, a big meaty nose, a nice big bit of kind of caramel malt just under there. You pick up that sweetness, but it's very smoky and very kind of barbecue meaty. But there is a little bit of nutty and bread in there too, and some kind of sweeter caramel. But without further ado, let's get into the tasting of this guy. So this is the Smoky Burns Rauch beer from Nail Brewing in Bassendean district of Perth in Western Australia. Cheers. It comes in 6% Richter scale. Yeah, on the first impression, it's not quite as thick as Schlenkerla, if you like, but it definitely has all the taste elements. And this is, like I've said on a number of my Australian beer reviews, this has a slightly lighter mouthfeel than Australian beer always has a lighter mouthfeel just because of the temperature in this region of the world, but it definitely has the flavour profile you expect. It's really nice. Yeah, it does come out a little bit more smoky than you would think from the aroma. The smoke kind of just gathers around the very sort of back corners of the tongue there and just sits there. You get that nice kind of charred, smoky malt feel to this one. And that's what you expect of this beer, obviously, with it being a Rauch beer. But you're getting some nice kind of sweet caramel just lining the back of the tongue there. But overall, it's that kind of smoked, ashy, kind of meaty feel that you get from this guy, and it just sits, it just blends all together really nicely in the middle of the tongue. There's a little bit of vanilla, and that kind of just spreads to around the edge of the tongue there. The edge of the tongue really is where you get the more hoppy kind of flavours in a lot of beers, but this guy obviously it's not intended to be a hoppy beer. It's a kind of full malt ale, this guy. And just around the edge, you do just get that little bit of nice kind of moist wetness in there, and just that's where the vanilla flavours come out, and the little bit of the woody character that you expect of this beer. But yeah, it's definitely a kind of full-bodied sort of meaty beer with a slightly nice nutty caramel underline in there. The flavours in this guy blend really, really well, and you've got that vanilla outline which just goes right around the edge of the tongue there, and the sort of smoky character, sort of smoky ashy character just kind of lingers over the tongue there, and it's absolutely beautiful. I mean, I love Rauch beers, and this guy certainly doesn't let the name down at all, even though it's from the other side of the world. So I love it when these kind of craft breweries can copy the style very, very well, and Rauch beer, the Nail Brewing Company, really have done it with the Smoky Burns there. In terms of the mouthfeel, I would say it's mid-bodied. It feels a little bit lighter. It's probably a light to mid-bodied beer, so it's a little bit lighter than the German ones. But usually when I was drinking these, they were all on tap rather than in the bottle. So you do expect that. A bottled beer, in my opinion, usually is a little bit lighter body than the tap version, and it just because of cask preparation basically. But it's really nice to done it. It's quite sessionable as well, which is quite cool. Usually after you drink the Rauch beer, you get quite full after one or two of them, but you could easily sit and drink quite a few of these. But it's really nice. It's light bodied. The carbonation's quite lively in this one, which again is an Australian characteristic. There's a slightly oily character in there which helps bring out the sort of woody, vanilla and caramel flavours, which go really well, mix in very well with the nice sort of smoky meatiness. But I mean, overall, it blends very well. The mouthfeel is spot on. It's interesting, as I say, because it's an Australian variant. But, you know, it's a beautiful beer, and they've copied the Rauch beer style very well. And if this is a reflection on how good a brewery Nail Brewing actually is, then I would be really excited to try some of their other beers. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this beer review, and please let me know in the comments section your own thoughts on this beer if you do happen to have tried it. And Western Australianers, please let me know some other beers to try from your state. I know Western Australia is one of the homes of Australian brewing along with Victoria, so please let me know some other beers that I should have a look at from your state. But as I say, I hope you've enjoyed this beer review. Please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. I hope you're enjoying my series of Australian and Kiwi beer reviews, and I will catch you soon with the next in this series. Cheers.